Hey guys, this is Isa, and I'm gonna narrate a battle between myself and Lutra. This battle was played in April. It was played in week 1 of Pokémon Online World Cup. So it was obviously the first game for both of us heading into this battle. And looking at my team, you can see that it's Jinx, Lapras, Tauros, Exeggutor, Snorlax, and Alakazam. And I designed this team with the intention of counter-teaming Lutra. Lutra is known for his one true team, which is Do You Like RBY Yellow Eggs? You can find it as a Rate My Team on Smogon, PO, Pokemon Perfect. And it's Stormy Lead, Exeggutor, Lapras, Golem, Tauros, Chansey. And I try to counter team him by using these Pokemon and some specific movesets. But Lutra immediately threw me off guard by using a Jinx lead. And my Jinx lead was intended as a counter to the suspected opposing Starmie lead. However, this was not what happened. Instead, we get this Jinx Ditto. So obviously it's a 50-50 for either side to come out ahead. However, usually when you use Jinx, you have a backup sleeper. And if you look at my team, you can see that there's an Exeggutor here. However, I was so confident that Lutra would bring Starmie lead that I didn't bother putting Sleep Powder onto Exeggutor. Instead, I honestly don't remember the exact moveset, but it was not an Exeggutor with Sleep Powder. So, if I decide to stay in here with the Jinx and use Lovely Kiss, and I'm not sure if I have any other choice really, I must win the lead matchup, otherwise I have a lot of problems very early. Yeah, that's about it as far as I can say anything right now. And there we go, first turn. So the Isa Jinx is slightly faster this turn than the Lutra Jinx, and Lovely Kiss connects. That's a major relief. I go to Snorlax, pressuring the opposing Jinx. You can't really switch in Exeggutor directly onto a Jinx. It's incredibly risky. Lutra decides to do the double switch through, or rather chain switch through Golem into Exeggutor. However, I get the paralysis onto Golem, and I predict that the chain switch is coming. So Exeggutor takes a body slam instead of an earthquake, and yeah, I am forced out from Snorlax onto Jinx, using Jinx as my sleep bait. And Lapras comes in. I now know that this is a variation of Lutra's most famous team, because the nicknames are the same. You can see that the Exeggutor is nicked Ice Cream, and the Golem has the nickname of Cookie. This is the same as in the Do You Like Red, Blue, Yellow Eggs? So from this point onward, I knew that I knew what I was up against, and that Jinx was just a variation. Either way, going to the matchup at hand, Exeggutor can't really stay in here and do anything meaningful. Blizzard does way too much for it to be worth to stay in. And yep, there's the Lutra Lapras. I predicted some kind of switch, but not I wasn't sure which one, so I went for Confuse Ray, and then I used Thunderbolt if he were to stay in. I'm not sure. I don't think that was the best play inside. I think that either Body Slam or switching out to Uh, my Snorlax would have been better. Uh, okay, so Thunderwave, something has to absorb paralysis unless I want to gamble on a 50-50 by using Confuse Ray. But that's not me. So I go into my Alakazam, which will be my status absorber. Ice Beam doesn't do a lot. Psychic crits, relevant damage, Soft Boil is used, Thunder Wave, and as you can see, I don't have a lot of ice move spam. I can get Blizzard Freezes from Lapras, but Jinx is sleeping and I don't carry a Chansey. So I reveal a Reflect. It's the most common move on Alakazams that aren't in the lead spot. And this is now gonna turn out to be somewhat stally. I will spam Recover and Psychic, and Lutra will spam Ice Beam. He gets a critical hit, which puts me into 37%. That's gonna allow Lutra to switch out into his Lapras. I use Recover. I don't get the full paralysis. Lutra plays it safe, using switching back into Chansey once I get the Recover off. And now we're entering Paralysis War. I am fully paralyzed for 2 straight turns, whereas Chansey is using Thunderwave 3 times in a row. I get a Psychic Specs drop, and Lutra decides to immediately heal that up. So this is quite stally, as we all can see. At some point, there's gonna be a switch from one of us, and since I already have a Specs drop, it's probably not gonna be me. However, that changes because Lutra gets another critical hit, completely disregarding the minimal damage it would have dealt otherwise, and instead going for a 40% crit. So Alakazam 47%. I'm using Recover, but it doesn't end up happening. Instead, we get a full paralysis. Alakazam is outside bonus range and Blizzard range, but it's obviously a gamble. And Blizzard was used, it misses, but Alakazam is fully paralyzed. So, not really worth it for either of us, but at least I waste a PP, so that's something. And then Lapras goes for Confuse Ray, and I hit myself in confusion. So, yeah, that's not very nice. I still live a Blizzard if I want to push my luck, but with a sub 50% chance of moving per turn, it's hardly worth the risk. And the issue is that since I lack a Chansey, or even a Starmie of my own, I have to switch out to my own Lapras. Lapras can obviously take Blizzards well. Lutra gets a critical hit. It's relevant because now Lapras is within range for Thunderbolt to kill with some good rolls. I think. I'm not sure. I think that's true. Thunderbolt connects onto my Lapras. I use Confuse Ray, and then Thunderbolt. Lutra switches out into Chansey. I get to use Confuse Ray once more, and we're in a Lapras Ditto. I win the speed tie, use Body Slam. He uses, I don't know what he uses, probably Thunderbolt, and he hits himself in confusion. I go for Thunderbolt once more. I'm not sure why I didn't go for Body Slam once more. Confuse Ray is used. Ice Beam gets a critical hit again. Lutra has been very lucky with these critical hits. But since they're all for quite minor damage, it's not too big of a deal. I use Body Slam. Chansey hits itself in confusion. And I decide to capitalize and go for the Snorlax switch. Chansey keeps hitting itself in confusion, down to 56%. That's Hyper Beam range. So Lutra has to switch out here unless he wants to gamble on Hyper Beam missing, or me maybe not carrying Hyper Beam. Yeah, you get the deal. So Lutra decides to go into his Exeggutor. I predicted the Golem and went for the Earthquake instead of Body Slam. Psychic and Body Slam exchanged, no side effects. Executor now obviously within Hyper Beam range. A high roll Body Slam can kill, but it's quite unlikely. I tried to predict the boom, but that does not happen. Instead, it's a critical hit Psychic, and that crit was very relevant. It wouldn't have been a kill without the crit, unless it was an absolute max roll. So, yeah, all those critical hits surely adding up at this point. Taurus comes in, trying to be a mean machine, revenging. However, Hyper Beam connects with Lapras, doesn't kill. Blizzard connects with Tauros once more. And I go for Hyper Beam again. That's a Lapras down. That's very good for me because it's the most annoying Pokemon on the opposing team by a decent amount. Tauros stayed out. Very excited about this. I have to switch out. Executor comes in, takes a Body Slam. No crit, no paralysis. Thanks for that. And now, does Lutra switch into his Chansey here? If he does, I could go for my Snorlax and we're back in a favorable position for me. But if I mispredict, that's gonna be costly. And I don't have the balls to pull the trigger on that one. Instead I go for Psychic. Chansey is down to 39%, so it's still very risky to... Well, Lutra more or less has to use Soft Boiled here, which is very forcing. I have the opportunity to make a play to switch in my Snorlax or a Tauros here. And yeah, Snorlax safely at 67%. That's not threatened at all by this Chansey. Tauros 53%. That's probably gonna be 2-hit KO'd by a Chansey if that happens, and a critical hit could spell the end of me. And as we know, if Lutra decides to go for Thunderwave, Tauros will be much less excited about that than Snorlax would be. But yeah, this is me taking my time to think, and I remember discussing prior to this battle if I should use Hyper Beam on my Exeggutor, and if I had done so in this situation, it would have been a very favorable situation for me. Hyper Beam Exeggutor is very unexpected, and it would definitely kill the Chansey at this percent. I'm not sure how much damage it deals, but I'm confident. I know it's over 40%. And yeah, I get the Snorlax in, and Lutra goes for Ice Beam. I think I disagree with that. I don't think that's a good choice. I think that Soft Boiled is the way to go. My switch was decently obvious, I think. Either way, I go for Body Slam. Lutra switches out into his Golem, paralyzed 75%. It can survive 2 earthquakes. It obviously doesn't survive a surf. Earthquake from Golem does not 1-hit KO Snorlax at this percent. So yeah, this is gonna end up to be a roll, and I get the minimum damage on my Earthquake. That's very unfortunate. Earthquake from Snorlax deals 35% up to 41%. So I had, prior to this turn, I had a better than 50% chance of 2-hit KOing the Golem, but now I do not have that chance anymore. So I have to either... I could decide to gamble here on an Earthquake, but my Earthquake is decently obvious, not entirely. Lutra, on the other hand, he has 3 options at most, the way I see it. Either going for Earthquake once more, trying to kill my Snorlax, using Explosion, trying to blow up on me, or sending in his Exeggutor. trying to soak an Earthquake and then threatening me with a Psychic. And 30% Executor, that's gonna live an Earthquake. Um, so I'm not sure what the play is here for either side. I don't remember what I did myself. Um, and yeah, I could switch. Yeah, here comes the Executor, and Lutra decides to blow up. I don't think that's favorable for me. I think that I should have stayed in and used Earthquake once more. Um, an unparalyzed Executor was probably much more useful than the unparalyzed 30% Snorlax. So yeah, in hindsight, I disagree with that choice. And we have a Taurus Ditto, and this is very important. We trade body slams and paralysis, but I am much more in need of that paralysis than Lutra is. If I don't get paralysis onto the opposing Tauros, I get obliterated. So the body slam paralysis was very much needed for me. Now I even get to use Hyper Beam to bring his Taurus down to 18%. That's incredibly helpful. Now it's Lutra's turn to be in a very uncomfortable position. Even if Body Slam does not kill, Executor Hyper Beam does. Chansey dies to Hyper Beam. Jinx has a 50% chance to die to Hyper Beam. Taurus dies to Hyper Beam. If I can paralyze Executor or kill it somehow, my Snorlax is in a position to sweep. So Lutra decides that he has to sacrifice something, and yeah, he has. And he decides to sacrifice the Chansey. I don't disagree. I think that's... actually, I do disagree. I think that sacrificing Jinx would have been a better play. I think that this is not the way to go. So Lutra has his Executor in. Snorlax is... I think it's a sub 50% chance of dying here. But... So, in theory, I could just go for the Hyper Beam. But it's not really worth it, I think. I can go into my Jinx here, sacrifice that, and go into my Alakazam. The issue is, I cannot go directly into my Alakazam because we know that this Executor has Egg Bomb. And Egg Bomb will, at 44%, it will not be enough to KO the Alakazam. But if he takes a Psychic first, going down to about 30%, then Egg Bomb is a guaranteed KO. So I cannot switch in my Alakazam directly here. Instead, I have to take the path over Jinx. And if I do switch to Jinx, Lutra could in theory predict that, but that's very risky, and he does not do that. Instead, he goes for Psychic. That's the very safe play. And Jinx now can wake up, but I don't need Jinx to wake up. All I need is for Jinx to be sacrificed and get my Alakazam in safely without taking any previous damage. So if I get a Thunder Wave off in this position, Snorlax is in a position to sweep. So I have to not get crit. Egg Bomb has to hit, and there it is. Egg Bomb misses, and Thunder Wave connects. This is now incredibly good looking for me. And it's quite peculiar. At this point, I want my Alakazam to die to anything that isn't the Jinx. I want Alakazam to die so that Jinx does not get the time to wake up. If Alakazam had a move that would just be a self-KO without doing anything to the opposing team, I would use it in a heartbeat in this position. However, I still cannot switch in directly my Snorlax because it dies to a Psychic. So I have to... This is a very peculiar position because neither of us wants to kill the opposing Pokémon. We want our own Pokemon to die so that we can get ourselves in a favorable position. I use Recover, and this Jinx has been asleep for one turn, so it has 2 turns. So it has a 3 out of 7% chance of waking up here. And for each turn that goes, the chances increases by 14%, 1 through 7. And this is, I remember this situation. This is where misplays were made. I should just switch directly into my Snorlax, going for the Body Slam. Instead, I try to get chip damage by using Psychic, and the reason for this is because I entirely forgot that Jinx could switch out after waking up. It was a major blunder on my part. Up until then, though, we can note that I'm getting unlucky. I get a crit specs drop, that's lucky, but I get 3 out of 4 possible full paralysis. And yeah, that's not gonna cut it. Lutra can't use Explosion here. He still loses if he does. This is going to be either a sacrifice or a way to switch. He can use Psychic here. If he predicts my switch to Snorlax and uses Psychic, I lose immediately. So I can't go for that. So yeah, Lutra decides to switch back to his Jinx, and I get full para for the 4th time in 5 moves. And I'm getting frustrated. 5th time in 7 moves, Jinx wakes up. I don't get to paralyze it, and this has now been a turn of events that I really didn't want to see. And now Lutra is suddenly in a very winnable position. In fact, he's advantaged, I'd say. I use Thunder Wave, hoping that he would stay in, but he does not. He sacrifices his Tauros. I think he could get away with sending in his Exeggutor, but that's not what happened. Okay, Exeggutor here. If it blows up on Alakazam, I lose. If it uses Psychic and KOs my Snorlax, I lose. If Exeggutor uses Psychic onto Alakazam, which uses Psychic, then it's a wash. It's not one. Alakazam does not necessarily to hit KO. In fact, I think it's not possible without either a crit or a spec drop. However, both those have a very high chance of happening when combined. And if Lutra uses Explosion onto Snorlax, that's favorable for me. That would leave us with an Alakazam versus Jinx situation, where Jinx cannot sleep me and has to connect with 3 Blizzards in a row. He has 8 remaining, obviously. I can go for a PP stall there. I can't really go for Psychics, trying to kill him before he kills me. And since I don't have Seismic Toss, I can't go for that either. And yeah, this is me being in the thinking tank, trying to predict what Lutra will do. And he gets a full paralysis, so in the end it was all for nil. But I asked afterwards, and Lutra said that he did go for Explosion. Hyper Beam kills Jinx. Blizzard here, not a guaranteed KO, but a very likely one. And it can obviously miss. Psychic does not KO. I here have the option of sending in my Alakazam to take a Blizzard. However, it will then have to take another Blizzard before moving, and if either of those 2 Blizzards are critical hits, I will die and lose. I can also get a full paralysis. So yeah, if we look at the chat, there's a lot of people saying that yeah, this is over, and this is far from over. It has been a very exciting battle, but it's not over just yet. And I have to do some calculations here, trying to find out how much damage Jinx really deals. this is really in the details. 3% here, 3% there is incredibly important. If the Snorlax had 5% more HP, then I would be incredibly safe here. This would be very 1 already. However, I don't have those additional 5%, so this is suddenly a wash. I am in a better position, but it's not by much, by any means. So I'm just gonna speed up this now, and it's a Blizzard, and it connects. And we have Alakazam versus Jinx in a match to the death. And the Blizzard is missing. That's incredibly helpful for me, and I get the Thunder Wave off. However, it's compensated. Alakazam keeps getting fully paralyzed, and Blizzard connects. Blizzard is used. I try to outstall the Blizzards, and we can see he has 4 Blizzards remaining. It's quite feasible for me to outstall that. Even through paralysis, both of us are paralyzed, so yeah. Blizzard recover, Blizzard recover, Blizzard recover, 1 Blizzard remaining. And that's the last Blizzard. So this is now a very favorable position for me, and Lutra reveals the Seismic Toss. But Seismic Toss deals 31%, I have 34, Seismic Toss cannot crit, and I get a very helpful specs drop, so if I connect with 2 attacks, I win from this point. I can also get critical hits to aid me, whereas Lutra can't get critical hits with his Seismic Toss. I do get a critical hit, Lutra is fully paralyzed, and I use Psychic once more to finish the battle. And that's it. That was an incredible battle. My heart was racing all throughout that battle. It was intense. It was a game with some interesting plays, misplays from my side, I dare say, but it was incredibly down to the wire. It was incredibly exciting to play. It was exciting to watch even in afterwards, despite knowing the outcome. And yeah, I think this is one of the most exciting battles that I have played throughout my Pokemon career. So I hope that you enjoy this, everyone. And yeah, until next time, this is Isa, signing out.